Hey there, welcome back to Total Geek Live Baltimore Presents. I am Baltimore, and today I am bringing you the Celestial Madonna Saga. That is this big one right here. It's huge trade paperback. Pretty interesting, pretty cool. This is a story that has been told since the 70s. This is been told in the 70s, a little bit in the 80s, a little bit in the 90s, and then we finally got the final kind of wrap up for this story in the 2000s. Which was quite fascinating to get a story 3 decades in the making, in the telling, so to speak. So this is the Celestial Madonna Saga, basically about Mantis right here and her story, which was really quite fascinating to get this kind of overall adventure spanning so many years to finally get the full story out. Because there's lots of starts and stops to the story. Steve Englehart, who was the creator and basically the architect of the Celestial Saga, Madonna Saga, left Marvel, so he didn't get to tell that part of the story. Then he came back much, much later to finish telling it. Roy Thomas and Jim Starlin are also big figures in the storyline as well. So this takes place in Avengers 124 through 125, 129, and then 135. And giant-sized Avengers 2 and 4, and Captain Marvel 33. So this is, quite, few issues to go on to get this story told, basically. And part of the reason, which is kind of interesting to note, is that Mantis is one of the only comic characters, that has appeared in 2 different, or actually 3 different comic companies' stories. Steve Englehart took the character with him when she appeared later on to kind of finish up this story, and she had a different name, of course, and a different kind of, close enough so that people who knew that it was her, but enough to difference to be like it's a different character. And of course, we have no in-continuity explanation for these, but we do have the creator saying that this is exactly what he did, which is kind of interesting and fascinating altogether. So Mantis is, when we first meet her in Avengers, she is a Vietnamese ninja, basically martial arts expert, and she'd been trained under the priest of Pama. So she had gained telepathic powers, empathy, and just very, very important skills. But she didn't know who she was at first. She thought she was just an orphan in Vietnam, and she met the swordsman who was a former Avenger, and he returns to the Avengers, and she wants to, become a member as well. So that's kind of an interesting storyline that ticks there. So she was with the swordsman for a while, and then, when she's meeting the Avengers, she kind of sort of falls for the Vision, who's at this point still having the beginnings of a relationship with Scarlet Witch, Wanda. So those 2 are actually kind of quite interesting to see them together fighting for the Vision. Okay. And we have a big storyline with Kang coming in and trying to abduct her because he knows that she's the Celestial Madonna. And so what the Celestial Madonna is supposed to be is one person, one woman who is a perfect human host, and she would be the Celestial Madonna choice to, present a child. And she was trained for this, even though she didn't know this. The other person that was trained to be the Celestial Madonna who did not get picked was Moondragon. So we get some really interesting origins for Moondragon in this whole storyline. Kind of get her, Moondragon is, I love, because she's really kind of cool. She's this bald, badass chick, telepathic, very, very strong mentally, using her powers. But she's very, very full of herself, haughty, confident. And that's kind of her undoing through most of her storylines. But she is really, really cool. So she was the other choice for Celestial Madonna, and of course the Madonna was ended up being Mantis. So Kang is attacking. He wants to find Mantis and bring her. His actual time counterparts, Ramatut and Immortus, are constantly making sure that it doesn't happen. So it's kind of a interesting time paradox there. You have Kang trying to get her, and then his former selves and his future self are preventing that from happening. So that's kind of interesting. So we have that happening. We have Kang trying to kill her at one point, and then Swordsman jumps in the way and takes the bullet and is killed. So of course, she is distraught over this. There's very, very, a lot of craziness happening in this storyline that Steve's created. Really, really fascinating work. So that pretty much happens, and then we have her falling in love and finding the Kotati, which is a plant-like sentient race of beings that are part of the Kree Empire, and they are the priests of Pama who have, retreated to Earth to, form this convent, place where they can train who would be the Celestial Madonna, which ends up being Mantis. And they have created a tree-like being called the Kotati, and they end up creating one in Swordsman image. And she ends up having a double marriage. Well, she didn't have a double marriage. There was a double marriage in the great giant-sized Avengers, where Wanda and Vision got married, and Mantis and the swordsman Kotati character got married. And that was really fascinating to see, that kind of storyline develop and put through and purpose. Then she ends up going to have a child with him. They raise a child, and for a year she's kind of like in the, living a life undetected from people. And then she races to the stars to be, with the sun, Sequoia, who she calls Koi, with the priest of Pama. So, and then we've lost her. We don't really see her for quite a long time. There are a few Mantis appearances. However, those have been turned out to not actually be Mantis. One was a space phantom, and the other, I think, was just an illusion based on, some things that were happening at that point. So, this saga is really kind of famous for Agatha Harkness actually training Scarlet Witch to be a witch, so that's really important that happens here. And then you get the Celestial Quest, which is basically the sequel to this Celestial Madonna Saga, which takes place, I think it was released in the early 2000s, but Steve comes back and finishes the story he's been telling since the 70s. So it's kind of interesting to see that kind of whole storyline be developed and pushed forward over decades, and kind of wrapping it up with these 8-issue limited series, which is called Avengers Celestial Quest. And in this we have Scarlet Witch, we have Thor, we have Vision, Silverclaw. Those are the Avengers lineup that goes to help Mantis. But the basic storyline is Mantis comes back to Earth because she's searching for her split selves. Her selves have been kind of pushed into different kind of empathic feelings, and she has to find them out and reabsorb them, take them back in. She finally does this, and she's on the hunt from Thanos. Thanos wants to have Koi, her son, and she's trying to get the Avengers to help stop that and make her son live without any kind of big things happening for him. So this was kind of a fun romp. I think there was a challenge because the artwork wasn't as great as you would have hoped it would be. I mean, it was clear, it was concise. You could follow the story and everything, but there was just kind of moments that felt a little off because Steve Englehart's style is very much in the 70s, and this is something that a lot of the early Marvel authors, writers have kind of struggled with, kind of coming from the Marvel method and the Marvel kind of like overall style of writing from the 70s and 80s, and now making that work in a modern age has been kind of a challenge for some of them. It tends to have a little disconnect for the reader. But this is actually a pretty fun storyline overall. I think that it sets up a lot. It brings Koi back into it. It brings Mantis back into it. She returns to space. She kind of becomes a figure in this cosmic Marvel world, which will be showing up in the Guardians of the Galaxy later on. And it kind of, they defeat Thanos to figure out that it's actually really not Thanos, of course. But we get, some forward movement on Koi, and the Avengers go back to Earth and kind of like settle things up. So it was kind of fascinating that way. Mantis really starts as a Vietnamese character and then turns green later on. And the whole ruse of being Vietnamese is, kind of a loss. I feel like it would be nice if they were able to maintain that aspect to her, because I think it's important to have some more representation around. But that's, where we are now. But I think it's quite interesting because we're going to have a huge event coming up, where I think Koi is going to take kind of a big, position in. I feel like he's going to be a character to watch in this new upcoming storyline from Marvel. But we'll see how it goes. But let me know what you think about this Celestial Madonna Saga, this big old collected piece right here. And let me know your thoughts on it. What did you think of it? Did you enjoy reading the whole thing, or was it a little bit of a chore sometimes? Let me know what you think, what your favorite issues were. Sound off below, like, comment, and share. And as always, it's all geek to us.